Today's best music.
Magic 89.9.
Welcome to the chat room. My name is Boom Gonzalez.
Magic
Our date.
89.9.
And entering the chat room today, we have a special guest all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Please welcome Erwan Heussaff. Hello, Erwan.
Hey, man. How's it going?
I'm good. Thank you very much for taking time. You do know this is a 5-hour show, right?
Perfect. I've only got time.
For those listening, of course, on the radio, we are at Magic 89.9 for those on the road or working from at home, and those watching on Facebook, on the Kumu app, and on Twitch. We welcome you to the show. Thank you very much. Okay, first of all, when was the last time you were actually on radio, buddy? I mean, that must have been... If you were ever on radio.
When was the last time I was in the Philippines? When was the last time
we'll get to that in a bit.
On radio?
Yeah, for anything at all.
It was in that same building as Magic 89.9, and it was probably with James Deacon.
Okay, so it must have been K Light.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And James, it was like a man show type thing. It was literally guesting, I think probably with I'd say October last year.
Last year. So, okay. So not so long ago. I think that's with Brian, with James, and Coach Chappie, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct,
good friends who host that show. Before that, October, was there any other time you were on radio? I'm just throwing this out there because you're always now obviously very visible, whether it's YouTube and all these other things that you're guesting on, and now all of these other podcasts, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I don't know. Personally, I just wanted to know whether there was like a time that you were doing radio guestings and all that.
No. It was, I think at one point, I don't remember which channel, but someone was trying to get both Nico and I to host a radio show / podcast together. And I think it's one of those things that it takes up a lot of your time because when people think podcasts or think radio shows, they think the amount of work that goes in is the amount of work that you're actually live or streaming or whatnot. So let's say your podcast lasts an hour. People think that 1 hour is effectively the amount of time that you're working for. But people don't necessarily understand all the work that comes before it and the work that comes after it. So it's a full-time thing that you guys do. And so for me to be able to even take that on would be immense. Like it'd be too much.
Yeah, so they were offering you that on top of everything that you were doing. So
correct. Yeah.
Right.
But like me before ever doing radio, no, never did. I did a couple of guestings here and there for certain brands or each time we had something to promote, but
correct.
Never as a regular.
All right. Well, welcome to Magic 89.9. And of course, as with anything, everything has evolved also. We're online. This will be on YouTube tomorrow and Spotify and all that for the audio version. So we appreciate you taking time. Melbourne, Australia, how's it been? How's the situation there? How have you been dealing with it? Because originally I asked that because you weren't really supposed to be there for a long time. The original plan, if I'm not mistaken, was obviously have your wife give birth in Melbourne, and then you guys with her family, I would assume, and then you would be coming back to the Philippines in and out, maybe just you personally. What was the original plan?
Yes, originally I flew here right before Valentine's Day, which seems like absolutely years ago already. So that was 14. Yeah. I flew in, I landed. We have to backtrack because it's kind of like the events, how it all unfolded was pretty wild. So at the end of last year, we decided that Anne was going to come here just so that she could relax and have like a non-stressful birth, which is why we decided to come here. And her mom was here, and obviously it's always best for whoever's delivering the baby to be with her mother. It makes a lot of sense. So we flew here last year after Christmas, and kind of like slowly settled in, and then Anne moved in with her mom, and then I flew back to Manila for work in January.
Oh, you still flew back to January?
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
And I was the last plane to land. I basically landed while the Taal volcano was erupting.
Oh, okay. During that time, right?
Yeah. So the plane shook, and everyone was like, "What's happening?" And then we circled for a bit, and then we finally landed. And then when I landed, I opened Twitter and I saw that the Taal volcano had erupted. So I was in Manila during that period when everyone was wearing masks and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in Manila for about 40 days, full on, worked every day, just to get all these projects done before I came back to Australia.
Right.
And then, when I flew back to Australia, I was already wearing a mask in the airplane, because the noise around what was happening in China and the travel blockages were already starting to happen. And I was just being really, anal. And I decided, right, I'm going to go on this flight with a mask because my wife's going to give birth. And the last thing I want to do is give them anything.
Right.
So flew here, everything was fine. Things getting worse. It's like, obviously she was pregnant, so we couldn't really do much. So we were already kind of in a bubble. And then every day, it's like a movie. Every day you turn on the TV and then you see the situation just get worse and worse.
Things were changing every day, right?
Exactly. And it's if you've watched any disaster movie in the world, it's exactly that. Like that's the premise. That's the intro of the movie.
Right.
It's newscasters on TV and it just degrades. And so we saw that, but we were already kind of like living in quote unquote isolation. And then finally she gave birth. Everything was fine. I was March 3. I was still slated to fly back to the Philippines on March 20. And then from there, go back and forth every 2 weeks. So I was supposed to be in Manila for 2 weeks for work and then come back to Australia for 2 weeks and then keep doing that until June.
Right.
And then like even a week before March 20, I was already talking to my family back home and they were like, we don't know if it's a good idea for you to come back home right now because of all these things happening. And March was really kind of like, that's when everything was happening at the same time.
Yep.
But no one knew how the world economy or travel was going to be affected. Right. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself a couple more weeks before just to see how things plan out. And good thing I did, or else I would have flown back to Manila and I would have been stuck in Manila with no recourse of coming back to Australia.
Which is what happened to me, by the way. I got separated. Yeah, I got separated from my wife because we were traveling prior to everything happening. We were in Thailand and Indonesia and then Singapore. And then I was forced to come back here on the 14th of March or 15th. And then I haven't seen my wife since. So believe me, you're way lucky. Where's
your wife?
My wife's in Singapore. She's based there. She's really based there. So we travel a lot. She either comes back here. I go there more often. I go there. But we were traveling before the whole thing happened. So I know what you're saying. And you lucked out that you were there, obviously, with Anne and, of course, the birth of a beautiful baby. Okay, go ahead. And then, yes.
Yeah. So everything started to close down, and in Australia. If anyone listening or if you've been to Australia before, you'll know that how absolutely strict they are when it comes to immigration, customs, anyone coming into the country, because, it is an island that has, is pretty pristine and they want to keep it that way. They want to make sure that they don't have environmental issues and stuff like that. And the government here is very, very strict. So I decided to stay because I knew that I would not be able to come in and out. Because as it is today, they're only allowing Australians to come in.
Resident,
but even the residents is a question mark.
Oh, really? Saying, because they have to quarantine.
And if you're a resident with no job, then they're saying, well, the government can't help you, so you're better off going home to wherever your home is. So it got pretty bad here. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stay because I know I'm not going to be able to go back to the Philippines and then come back to Australia.
Correct.
So I've been here ever since. Wow. It's been interesting.
But it's been a blessing, man. I mean,
everything
that has happened.
The very first thing I saw when kind of like this whole lockdown happened, because we're still in lockdown here in Melbourne. Right. Mm-hmm. So the lockdown we're in is similar to what you guys had with the ECQ. It's still very much, the restaurants are still not open. You still can only go out for groceries and exercise. That's about it. Okay. Specifically in Victoria and Melbourne, because we have a lot of cases now here.
Right.
When lockdown happened, everyone first came out, oh, perfect. This is going to be the perfect time to do this and that and take the time to learn something. And And for me, it was completely different. It was when lockdown happened, it was stress, 100%.
Oh, I want to talk about that. Yeah, because I want to know whether you did go through that an anxiety phase at the start, especially when people really didn't know what was going on or how it would proceed. Okay,
huge. Go ahead. I think for me, I'm someone that is extremely active, slight workaholic, kind of like my dad, and to be forced into a place that was never my home, and then to need to manage the companies that I run in the Philippines from a distance, even though there's only a 2 to 3 hour time difference. That 2 or 3 hours is massive, and I think that lack of physicality is huge for certain teams. Like I have a team, we're very tactile, we're very used to random meetings on the hallway, we work in a very loose, new, modern structure.
And some of the best ideas come from those random meetings.
Correct. Yeah. So we don't do the whole like booking a meeting 2 weeks in advance in a meeting room. We're having coffee and we're like, all right, let's discuss the plans for the next 2 weeks. So we lost all of that. So it was very strange. And obviously projects stopped and everything. So you come to a point where you realize, how do I keep the revenue streams going if at all possible?
Correct.
How do you make sure that you don't have to let go anyone? Because the last thing I wanted to do is let go someone while all of this uncertainty is happening. And how do you get people paid and not have to dip into your savings to pay people from your company, right? Because business-wise, it makes no sense. And so for me, the first few months and even up to today, there's still a tinge of stress because it's a daily uncertainty to have to deal with. It's great to say, all right, let's figure this out until things turn back to normal. It's great to have that knowledge of normalcy coming back eventually. But currently
we don't know when that is.
Yeah, we have no outlook. So it's like, let's forget about things going back to normal and let's accept this as our current situation and as our only situation. How do we do business in today's environment? I don't care what's going to happen in 2 months. I came from a year in 2019. All our businesses finally were really picking up. They were maturing.
So there was momentum.
So much momentum. And I did all my forecasting at the end of 2019. And I was like, 2020 is going to be insane. It's going to be a rocket. Like my wife's giving birth. All these like business deals are coming through. It's really going to happen. It's going to be such a good year. Like all the 10 years I've been working really hard, it's going to be really good. And all of a sudden, boom, this happens. So it just shows you that you can't be sure of anything.
Nothing's guaranteed, man.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing's guaranteed. So right now, my mentality and my team is like, we take what we can now and we figure things out now. And then if the situation changes, we'll figure it out. But I think it's very hard to plan. But I think what we were able to do is put ourselves in a situation that we were flexible enough to deal with the fluidity of the situation. So whatever comes our way, we'll manage it. We'll be able to manage it.
I wanted to dip into that because I also wanted to establish the fact that the perception, there might be at least, Erwan, the perception that, they're safe and sound in Melbourne, everything's good. They're in a better place. And I'm sure, they've saved a lot and this and that. But I also wanted to dip into it because I wanted to know that the situation is real. The concerns are real. Of course, for different people, the levels of stress are very different. But that doesn't mean that anybody is spared. Regardless of your field, your popularity, all of these things, or business for that matter, everybody feels a certain kind of anxiety. Now, that's the work part. How now, obviously there are a lot of anxieties and you're still stressing about it, as you said. Now you balance it out because Dahlia comes into play. And how does that feel in the middle of everything?
Honestly, that was my like silver lining saving grace.
I bet.
It's like I was saying in the beginning, everyone came into this and said, "Oh, great! I have all this time to learn a new skill and learn a new language." And people were like, there's so many videos in terms of motivation and losing weight and all that. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get fat and I'm gonna learn how to be a dad. That's what
you're gonna learn how to carry a baby. That's your skill.
Exactly. and I was like, you know what? I have an opportunity today. I have an opportunity today that I would never have ever. And that is to be like 100% a full-time dad. Like ever since she was born, there hasn't been 1 hour I haven't been with her.
That's interesting, because if this would happened in Manila, it might be a little different. Are you saying, is that what it
100%
could have been? Okay.
If I was in Manila, if we had gone in lockdown in Manila, I would have been forced to go back to work. Okay. Now there are physical restrictions for me not going to work. So literally I'm sitting here at my dining table doing all my work from here. If I was in Manila, our offices are still running, yes, with physical distancing and everything. But then we're the type of bosses that, of owners, that if the staff is going to be there, we need to be there, right? That's how my dad taught me how to do, work. And so if we were in Manila, I wouldn't go to the office every day, because we don't require people to go to the office every day, only if something is happening. But I'd probably be in the office maybe 3 times a week. And I'd probably be seeing friends. People would be seeing friends. Right now, it's so special because I have 0 friends here, none. And literally, so it's just been me and my mother-in-law and my daughter, and that's it.
And it's not like you can make friends because again, restrictions.
I know some people here, but we haven't been able to hang out. And so it's been a very weird situation. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I was saying, before we went to lockdown here, I should have just rented a house in the mountains somewhere, because I feel like it's so weird to be in isolation in a place where you're not supposed to be isolating. Like, how strange is it to be in a huge city where a lot of stuff happens, and it's the same thing in Manila, yet you have to stay in one place. And I think that messes a lot with people's mental health.
Of course.
I imagine if you were in the Philippines, I'd move anywhere in the province, get a little, house somewhere. I have some friends who have actually like rented houses in Belair and stuff like that, or have moved back to their parents' provinces, just because you have a little more space and flexibility.
Right. And Melbourne, obviously, which is a melting pot also of like nationalities and all that. There's so many people from different nationalities whom, you could get along with, make friends with, but unfortunately cannot do that. But
Melbourne, out of all the cities in Australia, funnily enough, Melbourne is the place you come to if you want like culture and to do city stuff.
Right, exactly. There's so much.
It's the worst place to be isolated
right now, right? But first of all, well, congratulations with the new baby from us here at Magic 89.9. We're talking to Erwan Heussaff right now, who's for those who are listening on radio or on the road, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Congratulations. Tell us, okay, stress, anxiety, you're worried about the businesses, you worry about the work. But let's talk about the whole fatherhood thing. How are you feeling right now? And when you just sit down with your beautiful daughter, and of course, maybe with your wife too, if she's around you, how does that feel? What's the new feeling? What's the feeling that you've never expected or ever experienced?
Fear.
I like that. I was gonna ask something related to that, but go ahead.
Everyone kind of talks about the beauties of parenting, and it's amazing. Like it's you access a part of yourself that you never thought was there, and that you never perceived to be there, and you never really understood how it would present itself in terms of the love that you can feel for someone else. You think, okay, I love my parents, I love my siblings, I love my wife, and all these people, but then a kid is so different. Like the type of love is just it's weird, because it's a mix of the need to protect someone, the need to take care of someone, the fear, so much happiness, so much accomplishment. But yeah, I think what no one tells you about is the amount of fear that's attached to it. Is when your baby's like kind of like sleeping on her stomach? Is she breathing? Is
Right.
if she hits
It's
her head on
normal.
something, is she okay? I know it's normal. Like I heard it's normal.
No, I mean, is this normal? You're asking yourself.
Correct. And then you're kind of thinking too, like during the pregnancy itself, the hundreds of questions that come into your mind in terms of when this baby comes out, what if something's wrong? What if there's a medical problem? What if all these things? And then it's like your mind is in continuous motion in terms of problem solving, and it's not used to that.
And you're in a pandemic too.
And you're in a pandemic. So for me, it's been figuring out how to stay positive when all in your mind is worst case scenario, worst case scenario, worst case scenario. And I think that's part of being a parent. So one of the biggest realizations I had is, as a teenager, I was a complete asshole to my parents. I should have been much nicer.
What is that fear? Okay, I wanted to touch on that because you mentioned it already. The fear that you had, the paranoia that you had, and then you realize you were just overthinking. Oh, it's not that bad. We talked about the actual fears, and believe me, those are all valid. Nobody's going to contest that, all your fears. But, you realize there probably is one or two, if there are, that you were fearful for so many months while Anne was pregnant. And then, now at this point today, we're talking, you realize, okay, it wasn't that bad.
The today,
anything. Yeah.
So no, the today is always amazing. Like,
okay.
Every day is a different day, especially when they're this young, I guess. Every single day you see something different. You see some sort of evolution. You see that she understands something that she didn't understand yesterday. All of that is fascinating. Like I still look at her from time to time, and I look at Anna, I'm just like, I can't believe that came out of you. Because as Dahlia grows, it's mind-boggling, like when you think about it. And that's why people call it the miracle of life, because it's insane when you think about it. But with all that good of today, you always think about tomorrow. When we watch the news here, we watch, you hear of kids getting leukemia and all these things when they're 3 years old. And it's just, it eats at you.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But I mean, it's kind of like with the situation in the pandemic, your energy is better focused on what's happening today and figuring that out and appreciating it, and being grateful for that, and then not necessarily thinking about the bad things, but being ready for them potentially.
Okay. How's Anne doing?
Good. She's loving it.
Yeah. Is there something that surprises you about her now? You've known her for a long time. You guys have been married for a couple of years. And then, of course, you've been together for a while, and your relationship has played out in public, at least a big chunk of it, for obvious reasons. In this stage of her giving birth, or maybe even just during the time when she was about to give birth, did you discover anything new about your wife that amuses you or surprises you?
Just how like the mother switch is like that. It's not. I don't know. Do you have kids?
No, not yet. Unfortunately, okay. Can't wait.
This is one thing Boom and Nico and I were talking about. Right. We were saying for dads, it's like a process to understand what's happening. For moms, it's immediate.
Correct. Yes.
Like that connection is forged from day one. Whereas for dads, it takes a couple of days. You're kind of looking at your child like, huh? How did this third person just come out all of a sudden? Whereas for women, it's automatic.
Right.
And just how motherly the instinct is incredible.
Right.
Like I still have times where I'm looking at Dolly, holding her, and I'm just like, how do I comfort her, or is she happy or anything?
Holding her the right way.
Yeah, give it to the mom, and
done.
It's like magic. You're just like, whoa. So that for me has been amazing to see. It's just kind of how she's embraced that role. I'm so impressed by it. Like I'm catching up by reading books and educating myself. Her, obviously she's educating herself, and most of it is ingrained. And I think that's amazing.
There's a blueprint already for them, right? That they're following. Did she go through any kind of anxiety? I mean, just because of the context of the pandemic, Was there, something? I'm sure every mother has their own concerns, but just add on to this, what's happening around the world.
Our general concern was mostly, just being 100% sure that no one here catches it in our household. So obviously, like if I catch it, I don't care. Like if Anne catches it to an extent, she doesn't care. The biggest fear that I think everyone has is to give it to someone else.
Right.
Like, how bad would you feel if you get it, you're asymptomatic, and then you give it to someone else and you just feel terrible, right?
Right.
And so for us with a newborn, that is amplified. The last thing you want is not the other day, but a couple of weeks ago, Dahlia got her vaccines.
Right.
And then she got a fever, and even just a tiny little fever, you freak out. And you literally watch her and you're like, is she okay? Right. So anything happening outside just amplifies the fear that we have inside. And it's just basically just convinced us more to just really listen to the rules and stay indoors.
What parent do you think you're going to be? What kind of parent do you think you're going to be, Erwan? How do you see yourself as a parent? What were your expectations about yourself and on this day-to-day learning? Because you're making up rules as you go along, for sure. Right? What do you see? I mean, when you kind of introspect about parenthood and about being a father?
I think a lot of it is the responsibility for another person that you feel. And for me, that kind of dictates absolutely everything. Like, it's making sure that you're making the right decisions, making sure that you're always doing things that are better for that other person. And it's not about you anymore. So like in terms of what kind of parent do I think I am, it's really, especially in the beginning, it's really making sure that your kid has absolutely anything that they'd ever need.
Right.
And just giving up. You really have to give a part of yourself to that person.
Right. We're talking to Erwan Heussaff right now. Of course, content creator too, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And now new father. That is the new job description for Erwan here on the chat room of Magic 89.9. Again, thanks for watching on Facebook, on Twitch, and on the Kumu app, and for listening on air if you're on the road or working from home. What kind of boy were you, Erwan? Let's talk about that real quick, because you were saying, man, I was mean to my parents, I was an a-hole to my parents, and now you look at your own child, and it probably makes you flash back a little bit to your own childhood. What kind of boy were you that people don't know about? Were you naughty? Why would you call yourself an a-hole to your parents?
So I was the third. So I have two sisters. And so I don't know. I always kind of felt in my own little corner. So I grew up very quiet, very introverted.
Really?
Yeah. And then so for me, Dahlia's looking at me now. So cute. So for me, it was, so I wasn't a great communicator. And I'm still not. Like, I'm still very black and white. Like, I don't see much gray. Even the way I run things in my company, it's very black and white. And I think by not communicating enough or not being a big talker, for personalities like mine, I guess you kind of expect people to understand you. And then you forget that people have different ways of understanding information. And so with my parents, it was like that. It was just me not necessarily saying the things I had to say or kind of like talking about my feelings and all that. So I was kind of like doing always my own thing and being very independent. And when anyone questioned that independence, I'd get really mad. Well, not mad physically, but it would really bother me. And then I would just go off and not talk to anyone for a couple of months. And then
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
And then go.
So isolation is not new to you, huh? In a way.
Very used to it. So that's how I was. And then I realized, that feedback of information is probably so key and so important.
Right. You've had a lot of odd or jobs in general. You've traveled a lot. You've worked in different countries. I want to touch on that before we get into where you are right now and as you are continuing to evolve, especially in this time where everybody's trying to be creative, if not pivoting, adapting, and all of these are the words that we're seeing in the last 4 months. But talk about the jobs that you had back then and in the countries that you've worked, because I feel like sometimes that is, you get to know a person through that sometimes. It explains something about them. When you talk about, all of that, struggles, obviously, odd jobs, if you had any that people never knew or didn't expect about you.
Well, I think part of that is because today people see you on social media.
Correct. Yeah.
They see what you do online, and they have a general idea of who you are and what you do and where you come from. Like, I think it's very easy for a lot of people to kind of pigeonhole me, box you in because you're half Filipino, you're half foreigner, you grew up pretty well in the Philippines, and so people automatically box you into a type of personality that they've probably encountered or experienced before in their lifetime.
Right.
And especially now with social media, it's like they see you for what you do now, but they don't necessarily know about your past, and they don't necessarily need to learn about your past.
Right. Obviously, yeah.
This generation nowadays, we're all about kind of like, we're big headline readers. So we read the headline of the article because it's nice and pretty, but we don't take the 30 minutes that are needed to read through the whole article. And for me, that is actually the root of a lot of problem is people not necessarily wanting to go to the end of things. And I think it's maybe just part of my personality, but before I form an opinion about anything, I really have to research it to a point where I'm comfortable enough saying, okay, I think I can make my mind up on this because I've read this art. I've read both the pros and the cons, and I've understood kind of the situation, and now I can talk about it. So I feel like not a lot of people do that nowadays, and I really hope that people do.
Even from an individual standpoint, you mean? Even if
definitely.
It's not a story, just as a person. Right.
Definitely.
Right.
Like I feel like the word hate and cancel and all that's being thrown out a lot. But then it's just like, do you expect people to be robots that don't make mistakes? Like we've all made mistakes,
especially in the past. Especially
and that's
in
how
your
you grow
younger
as an
self.
individual. Yeah,
because I like that you mentioned that, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I like that you mentioned that because you know how some of these celebrities, whether they're local or international, get called out for, let's say, tweets from 2010, 2011, 2012, when they were 14, 15, 16, 17, where we are all supposed to be stupid also, really. Correct. And talk out of our asses, so I know what you're saying, and that's why I guess I'm trying to also understand what was your adversity and struggle, if there were any, and I'm sure there were, also in terms of your past jobs before it became as glamorous in terms of the perception that it is right now.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think for it really started for me. Like my dad is such a big figure. Like
sounds like it. Yeah.
He's physically tall, but aside from that, like he's like 6 foot something, 6 foot or 4. Wow. But aside from that, in terms of personality, he just has such a big personality
and big influence on you. I
huge.
Assume. Okay.
Huge influence in a very different way.
Okay.
Like he was in the French Navy, very, very, very poor family from the west of France. French Navy because his brothers, so my grandparents gave him the choice, either you're going to be a priest or you're going to be in the Navy. And so he was one of the sons to be chosen to go to the Navy at 16.
Okay.
So he was in the Navy for a couple of years, and then after that he became geothermal. Basically, they would send these people out into the fields in places where there was nothing. So we're talking about Borneo in the 60s.
Okay.
Labrador in Canada in the 70s.
I can picture. Right. Okay.
Absolutely nothing. Places in Africa where his house was literally surrounded by baboons. And he was the only person there, and he would get his supplies by airdrops. And so you grow up with all these very colorful, big, inspiring stories of adventure. Something that in our day and age, we don't really hear about anymore, because a lot of what we do is online and on phones and all these things. Right. So I knew from a very young age, I was like, I need, quote unquote, my own adventure. Like, how do I make this happen for myself? I grew up very not wanting for anything. And I'm very grateful for that. Like I had a really, really good childhood. And then, so I grew up in the Philippines, high school there, and then I went to college in Paris. And then after college in Paris, you know, there were job offers left, right, and center. And my French peers were basically all complaining. They're like, oh, you know, like being really spoiled, saying things like, oh, I can't get the managerial position I want, and all these things. And I grew up with that mentality of you got to earn your keep, right? So I didn't expect to get a big job right off the bat.
Not entitled, in other words, to use the word. You don't want to be entitled. Okay.
And so understanding that during college, so we had 6 months in France, it was a very kind of like intense program where we only had school for 6 months. And then for 6 months, you could either take a vacation or get a job. And so each time I had the opportunity to, I would just randomly email hotels around the world and say, hey, do you guys need anyone for 6 months? Like not necessarily an internship, but what they call a saisonnier, a seasonal worker.
Okay.
Because it was a 6 month period. So I ended up going to Shanghai for 6 months, where I worked as basically a banquet waiter. Okay. Dishwasher. I helped fix air cons and stuff like that.
You fixed some air cons too. So you did that too. Okay.
Multiple hats. Okay. And then I was living in a dormitory with Chinese people from, you know, far-flung villages that didn't have homes in Shanghai. So, yeah, so we were like 24 people in a dorm room with complete strangers. I had a small high school American locker for all my stuff to fit into. Communal showers, things like that, like real life. So I did that for 6 months, came back to Paris for another 6 months. And then after that, I went to Vietnam for 6 months, where I was for 6 months the assistant to the F&B manager there of one of the biggest hotels in Hanoi. And then after that, I came back to Paris. And then that summer for 6 months, I decided to stay in Paris. I took care of banquets again and events, organizing them in a hotel in Paris. And then before I graduated, I lived in Greece for 6 months. And there it was a huge resort. And they called it the conflict resolution manager. So basically I took care of any guest complaints.
Yeah,
pretty much.
PR. Yeah.
Any guest complaints, but also any internal employee fights and complaints and stuff like that.
Okay. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
And then after graduating, so yeah, everyone was saying, oh, I feel like I should be the general manager of whatever. And I was like, and so they were all complaining about not getting jobs that were paid and everything. And I was like, you know what? Like the one thing I learned from my dad is to go for things that other people aren't going for. So I started
less demand for it. Is that what
exactly.
it is? More space for you.
So I started looking for jobs in Nigeria, Iraq, Iran, Africa.
Wow, Iraq and Iran too, huh?
I was looking for jobs in Venezuela. Thank God I didn't go there. Just various places. And
Russia, didn't you go to Russia too?
Yes, so a couple of them replied, and then the best offer financially was Russia.
Okay.
And this was further east than Siberia. So I usually call it Far Eastern Siberia, but it's really just the most eastern part of Russia.
Right.
And it was a small island called Sakhalin with 200,000 people. They were only famous for shooting down a Korean airplane once in the 80s. Basically during World War II, that's where they sent all their war prisoners. We're talking about Soviet Russia here, so USSR.
Yeah, right.
So basically the people they would send into prisons were homosexuals, artists, descendants, people who are against the government in general. So they sent all these people into these gulags,
in that section,
but also really bad people like prisoners and whatnot. So it's a very tough place, like with a very tough history. So when I hope the money was worth
it. Yeah.
So I looked at the salary. I'm just like, why is this so big for a new grad? And why does no one want this job?
High risk, high return, huh?
So the CEO from the company, which was Sodexo, was in Paris at the time, and he emailed me and he said, "You want to have coffee?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we had coffee, and he kind of explained to me the job. He said, I'd be in charge of 40 people. Running all the operations of all the catering, coffee shop, bars, clubs, and oil rig food operations, so dispatch food for Eastern Russia. And I was like, that's huge for a 21-year-old. Like, that's absolutely massive. Right. And so after the coffee, I remember I told him, I'm like, game, let's do it. And then I went home, I went on Google and I typed in the word Sakhalin. And then I had a little mini heart attack. And I was like, I accepted this. And, I think a lot of people would have backtracked at that point. And I was like, you know what? This is what I wanted. I wanted this discomfort, this fear of the unknown, this big adventure. Like, this is my adventure. And so I went there for 2 years.
Didn't you want to Google them first before accept the job? Isn't that supposed to be the? But
I feel like at that age, I think that's the thing with a lot of people out of college or young people is we have way too much expectations for ourselves. I believe I wanted to get my ass beaten. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Make me mop the floors. Spurs. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then so I went there, and then I realized from day one, this is going to be an adventure. Like, we landed, it was icy. It was 6 months. 6 months of the year is winter, and 6 months of the year is weather. Right. Tiny airport, the most rudest immigration officers I ever met in my life. And in that area, the most xenophobic people I've ever met. Like, just because I was French and I looked different, people didn't like me right off the bat. I'd walk down the street, in my 2 years there, I got jumped twice on the street for absolutely no reason. Like, maybe just the way you look. I would have been happy if they took my wallet or if they took my phone.
Oh, okay. So they you up for
literally, they tap me on the shoulder and they go, "Hey, you want to go?" And you're just like, "What?" And then it just breaks out.
Right.
And so that was the kind of place. And then out of the 40 people that I was managing at the time, I can guarantee you when I started, everyone hated me because I was younger than everyone. I was younger than all my quote unquote. Right? Exactly. I was younger than all my employees. And the reason why they wanted to bring young blood is because it was a business for the last 10 years that was losing money. So my job was to try to get that to zero, to break it even. They didn't even expect me to make
at the very least, right?
They said, just break even. Let's see if it's possible.
Right.
You're kind of our last
resort
draw. Yeah, before deciding whether or not we're going to close shop here. I was like, wow, thanks. You should have said that during the interview. And
a lot of things should have happened before the interview.
And so I had to deal with people who just wanted nothing to do with me. And there were people that had been there for 10 years that thought they could do the job much better than me. Right. And so they had this young kid coming in telling them what to do, and not a lot of them liked it. I wouldn't be surprised if those are some of the people that beat me up.
You just didn't recognize them.
Exactly. And then so after
the dark alley, it was a dark alley. I didn't see them. So yeah.
After that, which was really interesting, so they call it a hardship rotation. So basically you work every day. Like, no one counts the hours. There's no clocking in or clocking out. You work every day as long as you can. It was usually 16 to 18 hours a day. Get really drunk on vodka at night. Do it all over again. And you do this for 90 days straight. Okay. And then you get 1 month off.
Okay.
So basically, I did this 90-day, 30-day rotation.
1 month, yeah. The 90-day again. For how long?
For 2 years.
Wow.
And so every time during that 1 month, I'd either travel or come back to the Philippines and stuff like that. So
and
a lot
physically recover.
And and that's the thing you realize. Like, I was the youngest expat there as well. Right. And so I had lost the ability to talk about anything else than the weather. Like, because I was talking to guys who were 50, having a beer from Arkansas in the US, like very strange people, like very strange profiles. Like this was an oil rigging town. So these were like oil folk. Oh. And so very hard people. And then so I forgot how to converse with young people my age. And so I'd come back and completely decompress. And then that's where I started kind of like writing a blog online.
Your
and that's
blog,
So that's how I started writing The Fat Kid Inside.
Right. So the only reason why I wanted to highlight this and ask you about this is also, I'm sure obviously a lot of people, I would like to think, don't know about the story, but it also highlights that it wasn't always glamorous. That, part of why we do this show also is to kind of dig into those things, to put things in perspective and to highlight struggles and adversity also before the time when it got glamorous, if it was glamorous, or successful, if it was successful, to make them realize that there was the earning of the spurs part of the journey, and that sometimes it's completely opposite of what the person is now. In your case, you could have given me 10 guesses. Let's say I didn't read up on you and I did research or whatever, we're just having a beer, whatever. And then you asked me 10 guesses on what my former job would be. I would not have been able to, right? Say that. So we fast forward now, content creation, got into a blog, you transformed it into a blog. This had something with your fitness journey. It was tied into that, right? And I know a lot of people know that already. And you got into this whole content creation thing. How many years? Has it been like more than a decade now?
About 10 to 11 years.
10 to 11 years. What's the biggest difference of content creating then and now that you've been at it over a decade? Because I'm sure you're learning still so many things.
Huge.
Not just right?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I think
yeah.
when we started is this was back when people blogged. Big
Right.
B.
Right.
So it was basically writing. I loved writing ever since, middle school. It's something I really enjoyed. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to talk about a story that for me was very fresh. And that was kind of like weight loss and how I made it happen and how I actually didn't think it was hard. This is a whole other show, but I get so mad when people talk about diets and workout programs, making it seem more difficult than it actually is. Because at the end of the day, it's more about mindset than it is about eating kale or quinoa. And so I wanted to kind of have that really hard approach to health and weight loss and tell people that at the end of the day, it's really just a conversation with yourself. And if you want to make it happen to lose weight or to lose fat rather, and to get healthy, it's actually not expensive. You just need to be smart about it and be educated about it. So I started talking about that. And then I realized, all right, writing it. And then I realized, I was like, how do you show people how quick food can be and how unglamorous food needs to be? Like we all eat for entertainment, right? Like if you're having a burrito tonight, it's because you want those flavors and you want to be entertained by it, right?
It's Taco Tuesday, so
exactly. So someone somewhere at one point sold it to you, right? It was a marketing thing, and they sold it to you,
right?
But then you could also go out and eat kamote and chicken, even and don't salt it with salt or pepper or sauce. You can make it super bland, right? Sustenance wise, it's the exact same thing. Why do you prefer one over the other? Because it's more entertaining, it's more fun, it's tasty. And I always tell people that's super important. Food needs to taste good, but it also doesn't have to taste good all the time if you really, depending on what your goal is. And so I was like, how do I show that to people? And then that's when I started doing really quick 5-minute videos of what I was cooking. These are really terribly shot, by the way.
But you decided to transform now into videos. And I again, I hate to interrupt you, but I just wanted to get this part clear, because you established that you were always an introvert, a shy guy. So the decision to go into video is, it's surprising, I guess, when we follow that conversation, because you had to decide on yourself, okay, I have to show myself. And since I'm not very comfortable about these things, tell me about that, that you had to just decide and say, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go into
all the first videos were my hands and the food. This is
okay.
Before BuzzFeed kind of came out, and now it's a thing. Everyone does hands and food recipes.
Right.
For me, it was just a way to kind of shoot things quickly. And I would speak in the beginning like a minute, and then speak at the end 1 minute. And that's it. So it was still very kind of like shy and awkward.
Okay.
And so I did this for a couple of years. And while I was doing that, I already had, I was doing a corporate catering job in Manila. So I was doing those two things at the same time. And then eventually, like the blog got bigger. I was kind of seen slowly as being a food personality. I was invited by larger hospitality groups to consult on some restaurant and bar projects, because that was my bread and butter, and that's what I did. I ran operations for restaurants, and more of And I realized I liked more of the idea side and the creative side of things.
Mm.
So I started doing that. And then I realized at one point I was like, right, I'm working all day and night basically. So I need to now make a decision. Do I want to go full time into content creation and the restaurant business and all that?
Was it even called that back then? The term
content creation,
right?
No,
right? No.
It was just whatever. It was
yeah.
Actually, it didn't have a term. It didn't have a term.
Just put up a video. That's
exactly.
That's basically the conversation. Right?
Well, back then, because YouTube was known for putting up cat videos. You know what I mean? Like that's what YouTube was. And for me, I've always been someone that's extremely passionate about multiple things.
Okay.
And one of the things I grew up watching is like Jamie Oliver, Anthony Bourdain, all these people. Right. And I always knew at one point I wanted to do something like that, either cooking on TV or a travel show or something like that. So I was in the Philippines and I was slowly getting known as a food personality because of the blog and because of projects I was getting into. Right. I started auditioning for TV shows.
Oh, you did? I was going to ask that. Was there any point that they were asking you to do showbiz?
So very quickly I realized this is not for me. I have a very particular way of talking, and I have a very particular way of presenting myself. And it's usually very, what you see is what you get. Which is not
necessarily what some shows, networks.
Yeah. So a lot of the auditions I did, a lot of people were saying, you need to be cuter, you need to smile more, you need to be friendlier, talk differently. And I have a lot of friends. I'm a friendly person. It just doesn't necessarily translate on my face.
Okay.
And so on TV, they just wanted me to be an over happy version of myself. Right. And I was like, I'm not comfortable doing that at all. So that's when I realized, I was like, all right, well, this thing called the internet is picking up now. Why don't we really just throw ourselves in this? And then maybe one day I'll be able to create a polished show that I want to be in, but myself. I can produce it, I can write it, I can edit it, I can shoot it.
So at this point also, Erwan, were you also getting comfortable with yourself now too? The fact that you were auditioning already and putting yourself out there, physically, face-wise, and does this mean that you felt like you were coming into your own also confidence-wise?
That's the thing. I always felt very comfortable in my skin. Okay. It's just I am just someone who prefers to think and to process things alone.
Okay. And I hear you.
So it wasn't necessarily a confidence issue. It was more of a, it wasn't. It was never a confidence issue.
Right. A presentation thing.
But I knew who I was.
Okay.
From the onset, and so when I did the auditions and people were asking me to do things, and I was like, well, isn't that the job of an actor? And they're like, and then so in the Philippines, that term they used a while ago, the showbiz term, is very blurred. Like, what does it mean? You know what I mean? Like, I think there's an expectation of a lot of the artistas to be a triple threat. You need to sing, dance, and act and everything. But a lot of the artistas that I know, some of them consider themselves more singers, some of them consider themselves more actors and everything. And so I was when I was auditioning, I was like, I don't want to be that, because I'm not someone with multiple skills. You can't put me in a variety show. I will fail and tank, and you will lose so many viewers because I will just talk and be boring and whatever. And so I was like, all right, I know who I am.
That's sad, because I was going to ask you to sing. So go ahead, please. Go ahead.
But yeah, so I knew who I was, and then so I was like, all right, let's lay down the path of how to get to the point I want to get to. And because of my upbringing, because of what I did in school, and because of all the different jobs that I did, I then really very quickly realized, I was like, I can't be being a celebrity is not a job. Like, it's not a job. Like, you're something, right? What are you? Right. So I asked myself, I'm like, what am I? And so I started to define myself as a business rather than an individual. And I was like, what are the skills that I've come to build? and how can I really bank on that?
Okay.
So I just try to get as good as I can in terms of filming things, in terms of filming food, in terms of storytelling, in terms of writing, all things that I've done in the past and all things that I was really passionate about. And I decided to put it all together in content creation.
Right.
And then once I realized that I had something that had a following, people were coming back, had viewership, and I was like, all right, well, now the internet is giving me the opportunity, and it gives everyone the opportunity to be your own distribution platform. We're all tiny little media companies, right? And so I was like, what makes me different from everyone's favorite term now, influencer, than a media company? Well, what's the big difference there? And it's the team. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start building a team and building a team behind the Fat Kid Inside, so that we can create really, really good content that you would usually expect seeing on TV. But now we can do it online, and we can do it on our own terms.
Right, because that's also the, if I may use the word, problem of television sometimes, is that there are restrictions. There are things that you are not able. It's like a singer. When you're back in the day, and I was talking to Quest last week about this. When you're under label back in the day, there are certain things that they'll ask you to do. 50% has to be our material, 50% has to be your material, right? So I suppose with you guys, it's the same thing, that if it were on TV, but it has to be like this, we have to do this. Oh, you can do this, but we have to balance it with this. But with a team, your own media company, as you would say, or your own production outfit, you dictate the terms, and you're responsible for your output, regardless of whatever it is. Am I correct for saying that?
Yeah, 100%. And then I realized that the ads follow the eyeballs, right? So as long as you have viewership, then you have inherent value that you can then propose to a certain advertiser or brand that has a product that they want to sell. And I think versus a celebrity doing an endorsement commercial, a content creator coming up with the concept, coming up with the idea, and having the shooting and production facility to produce that, and then going to brand and saying, hey, I have an amazing idea for you guys in terms of how your brand can advertise something, but in the same time, it's authentically made in my voice, and it can live on my platforms, but I can also extend the license to your platforms and however you want to promote it online or on TV. And so that's what we started doing. We started pitching ideas to brands.
Right.
We had no idea what their marketing budget was. We had no idea what their advertising budget was. We just had pitches and ideas of shows that we wanted to create, and we started sending this out to different brands around the country. And then we started getting bites for it. And I was like, right, this is actually a good business plan. And I was like, can we do this for other content creators such as myself, who have platforms, who have a certain treatment in terms of their storytelling, but who don't necessarily have the production outfit that I've built over the years.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's where we started giving our services to other content creators.
Okay. How important is, and this might sound like a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. How important is authenticity to you? Because in this world now, especially during the pandemic, I'm sure there are so many who got into it, and I'll get to that in a bit. But how important it is to stay authentic, to define that, to decipher what is authentic. Because right now, whether it's podcasts, YouTube channels, and whatever digital stuff, online stuff is out there, it's a dime a dozen now. There's a lot more, especially with the pandemic. You talked about how you would separate yourself, and that's about subject, that's about the actual content, what will separate you, but also how important is authenticity? Because if you're not comfortable doing something, but you're seeing everybody, they're making so much money, this, doing that, and you want to get into it for that simple reason, well, not simple, but for that main reason, I don't think it's going to last. I think in any field for that matter, whether it's digital or sports, or if you're not authentic to who you are, what you want to do, where your heart is it the same with content creation, or is it even amplified on content creation? You can see through whether this is not authentic or not.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it's, authenticity is something that people have linked so closely to content creation over the last couple of years.
In what way?
and then you start. I mean, like in it being the most key value.
Okay.
That all content creators or influencers need to have.
Okay.
To a point where authenticity was fabricated, right?
It's a fine line. There's a fine line there.
Exactly. Where authenticity was faked. And so I think the word I like to use now is congruence, which means to actually live authentically, right?
Okay.
To follow through with what you talk about.
Okay.
And I think for that to happen, the two key values that we hold dearly are transparency and honesty.
Okay.
And as content creators, if you're able to make that shine, then you can take on projects and whatever brands, because there's always a way to make something work for you as long as you're honest and transparent about it. Like you'll have a lot of content creators that you probably don't know about that on YouTube randomly they pop up and I'm like, these people are 10 times bigger than what I'd ever be, like in terms of views, virality, and everything. And that's because they're so authentic and they're so real. But they're very hard to brand. And that's why you have a lot of these people with 10 million views per video, but you don't have a lot of branded deals coming in. And it doesn't really matter because they're probably earning a lot on the platform itself.
Correct.
Whereas for me, I don't make viral content. So I don't earn as much on the platform. I'll earn more by the brands.
On the brands. Okay. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
But when these people get 10 million views, and if they were able to get a branded sponsorship deal, their community, because they're so used to them being so honest and transparent and real, their community would be so happy for them. They'd be like, oh, good job. Good on you for getting that deal and everything, because they've seen them grow through the platform. And so
you're able to maximize both the platform and the branding.
Correct. Yes.
Right. Okay.
For me, it's been a process because in the beginning I was mostly talking about health and fitness and fat loss. So every time I would make like a lechon kawali dish, people would get mad at me. Or let's say I worked at the brand like Pure Foods, and people would be like, why are you working with a corned beef brand? Because you're all about health and fitness. And I was just like, you think I eat celery every day? Like I eat bad things too. And then I realized it's not on them, it's on me. Like I just wasn't transparent enough because I'm very selective with what I show people. Right. Because my life isn't online. Right. A lot of the younger people who are now content creators, their whole life is online.
I like that you mentioned that you make that distinction. Right.
That's why I always tell people I don't necessarily vlog with a V, because the term vlogging is usually meant for people who are used to holding the camera,
the selfie,
shooting themselves and talking about their lives, right? And some of them do it really well. Me, like I told you a while ago, if I were to shoot my life, people would be bored to death because I don't have that personality to be able to talk about my life that way.
Same here, yeah, I agree.
That's why I do recipes, because the video has a point.
Right.
It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'm going to show you how to make kare kare. Let's get there. I'm going to show you how to travel to Shanghai in 48 hours and what to do there. Yeah,
because you do also obviously delve in traveling. Right.
So it has structure, right? Right. And that's what I loved about TV shows is the structure. It's the structure of the story versus one person just storytelling. And so, yeah, so I realized that for me, I was very different from what everyone else is doing online. And so what I needed to do to be able to kind of but to show people more of myself. And that's when I started doing the travel stuff. Right. That's when I started doing things that were slightly out of my box so that people would understand, oh, he doesn't just eat healthy food and make healthy food.
Okay. I hear that. Now that you're getting into that, or now that you're evolving that part of yourself because you want to show more of yourself and be a little more transparent, how now do you determine when you shouldn't? Like, for example, your wife, and now obviously your baby, they're going to be, if not, they're already the talk of the town, right? They like, in the celebrity world, they always like access. Right? They want to see things. They want to see what's going on. And it's hard for some not to show these things. for others, it's very natural to them. And, you know, God bless them that they can do it so naturally without any hesitation. For you personally, how now do you draw the line? Especially that obviously your wife's a big star. The baby obviously is big star just by virtue of being your baby, right? How do you draw that line now? And what kind of conversations do you have with yourself to say, oops, nope, not this part?
I think both of us have been really good actually at keeping most of our private life quite private. I think if you look at, you know, other couples out there, or in terms of how much we've shared over the years, you know, we've been together for like 10 plus years now.
Right.
I have 400 videos on YouTube. She's in 10 of them, maybe. If I really wanted to, I would have leaned into it a long time ago.
I bet, yeah.
But
if it was just about the numbers you're talking about.
Correct. And I know today, if I want to make a viral video,
right,
I just have to shoot my daughter and my wife. Like that's all I have to do if I want to make bank on that. Right. But it doesn't sit well with my values.
Okay.
And so that's why I think for me, for both of us, it's actually always come naturally to just be very like not careful, but it actually comes very naturally in terms of what we want to and what we don't want to share.
Protecting your relationship.
I think it's important to have that.
I agree.
That part of your life that's not out there.
Right.
So if you look at my Instagram feed, it's not done on purpose. It's really not done on purpose, but it just so happens that maybe the last picture I posted of either my wife or Dahlia was probably months ago, probably 2 months ago. And it's not a conscious decision. It's just when I have something or I take a really nice picture and I'm like, oh, this is so nice. And I think people would appreciate this. And I think,
but I bet you have 1,000 other more pictures that is just between the two of you, right?
Yes.
I see what you're saying.
And
right.
So for me, I've always been about posting with intent.
Okay.
So I don't randomly share things. It's just when I see something that I feel could add positivity or beauty to the world, or that could start an interesting conversation, then that's when I'll put up a post about it.
Do you and your wife sit down and talk about these things? Do you have that conversation? No, it just comes natural to both of you also? Because
I'm lucky that we have the same personality in that aspect.
Right.
And because we both know, well, I you know, when I have, let's say I have 4 million followers on Instagram, each time I put up a picture in my head is, what does 4 million people look like? Like, can you imagine that? No.
Hell no.
Would you ever be given a microphone and say, hey, say hello to 4 million people? No. But that's what Instagram does. It puts you in front potentially of all these people.
That's what I used to think about radio when I started, or on TV, right? You know, I mean, there is that certain parallelism between.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And when you start thinking about that responsibility, you're just like, oh, okay. Like, let's take a step back here and understand what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. We're talking to Erwan Heussaff, by the way, for those of you just tuned in on radio, Magic 89.9, watching us on Facebook, on the Kumu app, and on Twitch. How's your wife taking the whole thing that happened here with her home for so many years? We belong to the same network, by the way, just in case.
I think like everyone is just dismay and sadness.
Still, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She she vocally posted about it also.
Right.
And it's just, for me, it was complete dismay as to something like this can happen in 2020 when absolutely everyone's informed about everything, but it still happens. You
think though, right? You'd think.
You think that it's impossible.
Right.
You hear about it. We've been hearing about it for 2 years, and you're just like, let's just talk. And then it happens, and you're just like, wow, like it's pretty serious. And you know, I've read about it, and I tried to understand a lot about it. And there were actually faults on both sides. There were, but then is the consequence fair? You know, and I think that's the thing on everyone's mind is and I think we saw Angel Luxin going around with the postcard saying, you know, let us be better. And I think, you know, why does everything have to be so cutthroat? Especially because, you know, I'm here in Melbourne, and for me, what was amazing is I turn on the TV at any time during the day today, and there's going to be some announcement related to COVID-19, to the coronavirus, telling people to stay home, locally.
Right. Okay.
Telling people to wear masks and all of this. And it gets it gets on your nerves. It's really annoying. Right. Like literally you turn on the TV and that's all you hear.
There's fatigue. There's the fatigue part of it. Right.
But it sinks in your mind. It really sinks in your mind. And I think that's kind of the missed opportunity, is understanding what, could have been done if the network was still allowed to kind of operate, and how much people in the Philippines do get their information from radio and TV.
But it is a strange time. But your baby has an instant story. I mean, what would you tell Dahlia when she's 14, 15? Did you ever think about that? Like, what are you going to tell her?
In Australia, they call them ISO babies.
ISO babies? Like, because
isolation babies.
Isolated?
And it's like if you gain weight here, they call it ISO weight. It's so funny, like, because they love acronyms and like shortening everything. So mate, you put on some ISO weight. I've been taking a ton of video because I had to basically of Dahlia. So basically, I've had to buy all this gear that was in the Philippines.
Philippines, right.
I'm still shooting, and I'm like, I need to be able to shoot here as well. So I bought a bunch of equipment, which was unfortunate. And so I've been shooting Dahlia a lot. And so she has like 5 movies already shot, done.
For yourself.
Yeah, for ourselves.
For yourself, yeah.
And but it's amazing footage. Like I would have never been able to shoot her this much. Like I have terabytes of footage of her.
I bet. It's great viewing for you and your wife. Speaking of videos, in your years of doing this, as we're talking to Erwan Heussaff here, final few minutes with him, and we want to thank him for his time joining us in the chat room. Is there any video there you want to take down?
Oh, I do it all the time.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's the beauty of the internet.
I want to hear this. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's not like, they say it's permanent and all that, but not for videos, especially if you control the video.
People can catch it.
Okay.
People can catch it, screenshot it, and whatever.
Yeah, for sure. But what about a video that you couldn't take down that involves you?
You're talking about the Tahoe video. I know you are.
No. Honestly, no. I'm speaking from
that happened. It happened a few years ago.
Okay.
And I don't mind it because I find it hilarious. And it just shows you the aggression on the internet.
Okay.
So I made a Tahoe video. Right. So I still shoot from time to time with a company called Tastemade out in Santa Monica in California.
Okay.
And so we shoot a bunch of shows for them that they then sell to other people, or that they run themselves on their channels. Like we shot a show called Origins, which is now on Discovery Channels.
Nice.
Like a bunch of things, which is really cool. And so I used to fly to Santa Monica for them to shoot cooking videos. And this is California, very different from the Philippines.
Obviously, yeah.
Yes, in terms of how many hours you can shoot in a day. Like there, once that 7-hour mark hits, that's it. Yeah. Everyone get out and go home.
That's your window, yeah?
That's it. Whereas here, people would extend to 14 hours, whatever, which is really bad. Right. And so
it's like movies.
Correct.
It's like shooting movies.
Right. And so for that to happen, to shoot 6 videos there in that time frame, here I'd have 6 videos in one day. I can shoot 2 hours per video. I can shoot within 12 hours comfortably. There, we had to shoot 6 videos in a 7-hour time frame. So very different from how we do things in the Philippines. When it's the Philippines, it's just me in the kitchen, and I cook everything.
Right.
In the US, you have food stylists who will prepare some of the ingredients for you.
Right.
And so it came to Tahoe. And obviously, tapioca balls are very tough. You need to pre-soak them. Like mungo, for example. You need to pre-soak it overnight before you're able to cook it. And so this was specified in the recipe. And it came to the last shoot. And this was the last video. And then I go, okay, let's get ready. And then the bowl, this was the first time I shot in Santa Monica, by the way. The bowl of tapioca came in front of me. And I saw it. And I'm like, how long has this been soaking for? And she goes, oh, just an hour.
Oh.
And I'm like, no. Like, it had to be soaked at least 12 more.
Half a day.
24 hours if you can, yeah.
Yeah, over there if you can, yeah.
And then she goes, oh, sorry, can we still use it? And then I'm looking around and people want to go home. And I'm just like, screw it. I made a stupid mistake. I said, screw it. Let's go. Let's shoot this.
So this is the backstory.
Maybe no one will notice. oh boy, was I wrong. And so we
Really,
shot it.
that phrase nowadays, maybe no one will notice. I think really that's a dangerous thing to say.
Yeah.
In a lot of situations, right?
Correct.
Nowadays, right?
And so we shot it, and it was, you could tell from the video that it was undercooked.
Okay.
Right? And if it was a huge mistake, like raw chicken, or wait, what's another? That's not a good example. If it was like a massive mistake of me, for example, cooking lechon kawali and then calling it adobo, like that for me is a big mistake.
I hear you. Yeah.
And then here it was undercooked sago.
Right.
I've eaten taho tons of times in my life.
That is true.
I know what a cooked tapioca tastes versus an uncooked tapioca. It's very different in flavor.
Correct.
And one will be crunchy. You can't bite it.
Right.
And so I know what it looks like. And then when it came out 2 years later, you know how the internet works. Someone pulled it out from somewhere, and then it just went viral.
Okay.
And people were like, "You're such an idiot. You're insulting Filipino cuisine." Just making it this huge thing.
Of course.
Like saying like I should not be representing the Philippines. And I was like, I never represented the Philippines. I'm just doing my own thing in my corner.
Right.
And I came out with this explanation. And even after the explanation, people were like, stop lying.
Right.
You didn't know it was raw. And I'm just like, you have to be really dumb to know that it's like saying your rice it's like eating raw rice. You know it's raw.
I get it.
Like, come on. And so I was explaining to people, and I made an apology video explaining all of this.
Okay.
And that's why I think it's hilarious. And so now I'm just very careful cooking Filipino food.
Are there here? Okay.
They took it down. They took it down. There you go.
Okay. All right. Other than that, like, is there an audition tape out there while you were auditioning?
Zero.
Shows that must be out there. Really?
Yeah.
Zero? Nobody can find that stuff?
Most of the auditions I did were just face-to-face auditions.
Oh, okay. So you're safe. All right.
I'm safe. But I've taken down some of my videos.
Right.
My ethos in life is you want to look back 1 year and call yourself an idiot. Like because that shows growth and evolution, right?
Okay.
And so sometimes I'll watch back videos and I was like, I don't like what I said. And so I'll just take it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I want to end with this, Erwan. Recently, I wanted to end on a positive note. Obviously, recently you did a project, incredible project, raising 600,000 pesos for a couple of companies. Now, originally it was 500,000 pesos that you were supposed to give to one, if I'm not mistaken, right? You were supposed to choose from, was it from SMEs, right? That you were trying to help in this pandemic situation. But it became 600. You split the two, and you hit initially two birds with one stone with what you guys as a team decided, or maybe even more, not just two birds, probably help some more. Can you just run that through it real quick? And is there anything in the pipeline that might be along the same line for you again? Because I thought that was an incredible thing that your team did.
So ever since the pandemic started, a lot of the money that I've earned online through monetization on YouTube and on Facebook, we've actually donated, but we've just very quietly donated it. Like, no
need to explain.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
so it's up to you if you want to talk about it or not.
Right.
And so we've been donating quite a bit. And then, I was like I said in the beginning of our conversation, for me, 2020, a lot of people said it's a write-off year. For me, 2020 is about, if my business can just break even this year, if I can pay my people, if I don't have to fire anyone and just survive, I'm cool.
Stay afloat.
Like, I'm not spending anything right now because literally I'm just staying at home. I'm just spending on food, right? So it's all about, for me this year is about kind of just breaking even.
Right.
And so that's the idea we had moving forward. And
which is more, by the way, more than a lot of the small businesses could say about themselves too.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And because, a lot of the businesses that I've put up around, in the last couple of years, I've closed a lot of businesses too. And I know how painful it is. And especially in the food industry, like it's a business, unfortunately, that requires a lot of people. And so when you close a business in the restaurant industry, it hurts a lot of people.
I know.
And so
I've also been through that. So yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And it's painful. And then so I thought there's a company called Lark who contacted me, who's basically is like Zoom or all these other companies. And they said, hey, we want to do commercials and stuff like this for our product. And I was like, you know what? I'm game, but can we give most of that money away that you're going to pay me? I'll take some of the cash to pay my people, obviously, and kind of just forecast this properly. But can we give most of it to other companies? And then they said yes. And then so we were kind of left to kind of decide how we wanted to do that. So the first idea was to just give it to charity. But then obviously we were trying to shoot a video for it. So I was like, one, I need more of a story. And then two, I feel like with charity, unless you really are very scrupulous as to who you're giving it to,
that sometimes you know the charity, you've been working with them for many years, maybe.
Correct. Yeah, and sometimes you don't see the physicality of it and everything. And I was just like, and so I thought of it from a restaurant perspective, and I was like, that's what I do. And I was like, how does this amount help more than one person? Or more than one organization? Effect. Correct.
Right.
So the idea was just to give it to, number one, to find a business that was doing something good. And that was City Hub, who they run dormitories all over Metro Manila.
Correct.
And they basically rent out rooms to workers, blue collar workers in the in Manila. And a lot of them obviously lost their jobs. And so, but instead of kicking them out to the curb, they still house them, which I thought was really cool. And then I met the owner, and he was saying, he was saying that the only issue that they had was food. How do you feed them? And so that's when we decided to announce it online that we were looking for restaurants who could then produce that food to give it to them. And in the same time, the restaurant's buying from a farmer and whoever his suppliers are and stuff like that. So I thought it was a cool way to kind of show how far a peso can go, and eventually come to a point where at the end of the day, it is still kind of like giving back to charity.
Of course, yeah. But you see where
affecting more people.
Going.
Correct.
Right. And I'm sure it was so hard to pick screening and auditioning everybody, because everybody's got a heartbreaking story, of course, of how their business is closing, failing, or whatever. Is there anything like that in the pipeline also? Are you, not that you should be pressured to, I'm just saying, is there any other company that has come up to you that you don't have to tell us the details right now, that something that your followers can expect that, hey, maybe we have a second shot at this, something like that? Is there anything in the pipeline like that, Erwan?
Currently, no, actually. No? But obviously we're open if there are any brands out there listening
right now, right?
Yeah, if you want to put something together, like I have a team back in Manila, and we're ready to do the groundwork.
All right. Erwan, it's been a pleasure. Sorry to take this time of yours from your wife, your baby, your business. I know.
No worries. It's bath time soon. So no worries.
Real quick, are you going to come out with a podcast? I know you were thinking about it. Is that still something that you do? First of all, do you have time? Secondly, concept-wise, have you settled on something? And then third, is it something that you really want to do? Or are you just being pushed into it by, I don't know, by what external factors?
So that you've hit it on the nail. For me, the only reason I was kind of considering doing it is because I felt, quote unquote, that pressure. Thinking I'm a content creator. I write a lot. I have all the gear. If I wanted to, I could put together a podcast. And then I really thought about it in terms of, do I really want to do it? And then for now, I think it's just a problem of time. Because like what we were talking about a while ago, in the Philippines, I could shoot 10 YouTube videos in one day with my team. Easy, because my team, we're like a little family. We know each other. We've been working together for so long.
3 years, okay.
Yeah, so things are very easy. Okay. Now, one video a week is a lot already. It's very time consuming because I have to do everything here. So I just don't think it's the right time. At first, I thought it was the right time because I'm isolated. I'm at home.
You have the gear.
And that's what a podcast is, right?
Yeah.
And then now I realize I'm just like, it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of work. So maybe I prefer to focus on what I'm already doing.
And guesting on some when you do have time like this one.
Exactly. Yep.
And we really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, man. It's good to see you again.
You too.
Hopefully we get together. I think the last time we were together, we were probably promoting a beer product, if I'm not mistaken.
It's probably in an event. Yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
well, it was like that. And well, maybe we can all do this in person next time. But more importantly, I hope you, your family, your wife, your baby, and her family there in Melbourne are all not just staying safe now, but will be safe and healthy as this goes along, and that we'll see each other in better times here in Manila.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
You too.
Yeah, thank you very much. Erwan Heussaff entering the chat room today, Tuesday, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. My name is Boom. Thank you for listening. This will be on YouTube real soon, tomorrow, Spotify, all the other platforms. As for a podcast for Erwan, it's a no for now. But we thank him for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you
so
everybody.
much, man.
Yeah, thank you for listening to Magic 89.9.